welcome back again to the Skillwork Forum. I'm Tim, joined as always with my partner Brett. We gather together and talk about issues, concerns, challenges, all surrounding the skilled trades. So again, we thank you for the time that you're investing to listen to us today. And Brett, we've talked before about this concept called the Fourth Industrial Revolution. As a matter of fact, we did a whole podcast on it. I think it's episode 13 if you want to look back and dig into that a little bit more. But in the past, we kind of defined what it was, the fact that it's emerging on the scene in manufacturing, construction, other industries. And we discussed kind of some of the changes we saw. As a matter of fact, we just did our look ahead to 2022, and that's one of the things that we see. It's here. It's actually happening right now. And we're going to kind of dig into that a little bit further today and how it applies to the businesses and really how to lead through that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's here. It's not like, I think for a while, even us, probably thought it was something that it's coming. It's the next, industrial revolution, when the reality is, and we'll unpack that a little bit more here today, we're in the midst of it. And COVID, which, the C word that we're all still talking about, has only accelerated the process. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I think we're going to want to spend probably the majority of our time, or a lot of our time today, kind of talking about, the talent and the skills piece of impact on this and where that impact is going to be. And so, one of the things, and I think you could apply this to any of the industrial revolutions, the key to any of these industrial revolutions, there's been 4 of them, obviously, and we'll unpack those a little bit here in a second just for some backdrop, but is that you had to have the talent, you had to advance the skills in order for them to fully take advantage of it.
Right.
And so probably more than ever in this revolution, or industrial revolution, is we're seeing even maybe a larger impact of that, because we're entering it in a time when there's a huge skilled trade shortage and a talent gap, and again we'll unpack that more. So there's a new book out called by Ed Gordon. It's called Future Jobs: Solving the Employment Skills Crisis. In that book, he says you can have all the latest technology you want, but if you don't have the talent behind it, your business is not sustainable. And there was also an IBM survey done in their tech group that said that of current, they surveyed, I believe it was 1,200 business leaders, and shockingly, only 1 in 10, so 10%, only 1 in 10 felt that they currently had the skills needed to implement the advanced technology of what Industrial Revolution 4, what's now being coined the Industry 4.0. So, big issue, something we want to unpack today and talk more about.
So if that means, and I went to school in Arkansas, so my math's not as good as yours.
Well, that's why 1 in 10, is
10%.
If you go with the easy ones, you can get them.
Yeah, so. You figured that out without a calculator. I'm pretty impressed. So that means 90% are not ready for this, right?
Yep.
The flip side of that. So that's the challenge that we're faced with today. So Brett mentioned we're going to take a look to make sure kind of everybody has a little bit of backdrop of this, background, some perspective. So we're going to take a minute to look at some of the previous industrial revolutions. There's been 3 of them. Again, we went into much greater depth in this in a previous podcast, but just to summarize, the first industrial revolution that most economists look at is a period of time that occurred around the 1830s, 1840s. So early in the 19th century, and that was the introduction of steam power, or steam engines and machinery into the manufacturing space. So prior to that, it was either water, it was wind, it was animals, horses, or it was manpower. So you think about the level of lack of complexity and the amount of human power and animal power that was required prior to that. When steam power came along and steam engine and machinery came along in the 1830s and 40s, we no longer relied on just wind to go across the Atlantic Ocean or animals to grind wheat into flour, et cetera. So huge step forward, and it had a lot of implications. For example, now manufacturing that used to have to be located near water source, used water power, they could be placed anywhere.
Yep.
So manufacturing then went to where the people were, and that's where all the industrial complex in the major cities started happening. Before that, it wasn't. It was out where there was running water. It was also it allowed the movement of goods and services much faster. So, things had a longer shelf life. They could move from one part of the country. Things became less regional, much more across the country and matter of fact, across the world. So it also brought on like ancillary businesses like coal industry. Prior to the steam engine, the coal industry was really an afterthought. Steam engines, coal industry went crazy. So there's ancillary businesses that happened as a result of that first industrial revolution, really moved things forward to a large degree. And then the second industrial revolution.
Yeah, the second, and I think the value in kind of unpacking these is I think it can become a little bit easy to go, oh, what's the fourth industrial revolution? Are these really just things that people talk about on podcasts, or are these really impactful? So when you go back and you think about, in our existence we've only had 4,
right.
So in the manufacturing space, and so they have had a huge impact on as a society today, and who we are, and even how cities have developed, and so on and so on. The second industrial revolution, I think you'll find a little bit of a pattern here. It was about 70 years between the first and the second, give or take. As you look at the third and then we look at the fourth, you'll notice they're happening quicker.
Yeah.
Because of technology.
Yeah.
And so the second industrial revolution, which most people would say was really the big move in that, was the introduction of electricity, and along with that, steel and petroleum production. So if you all of a sudden, you had you went from steam to electricity, and that was it created mass production, buildings that could reach new heights. Like I said, you went to where the populations were. You're talking about suddenly lighting and not to mention obviously the equipment and so forth. But if you think about from a talent perspective, if at that time the manufacturing and the skilled trade groups, if they had not embraced the idea of electricity, if you didn't have electricians, if you couldn't, this movement, the second revolution, would have been slowed dramatically.
Sure.
So
yeah, it's interesting too that, and I just finished a book about the invention of wireless radio, Marconi, and today we look at that and goes, oh, that's kind of cute, that instant. It's just, it's not that long ago. The ability to contact anybody outside the landline was just unthinkable. It was considered almost magical that you could talk to a ship at sea through wireless. So it just revolutionized industry in a major way. So the third industrial revolution actually came about 70 years after that one, and it was really the advent of technology and automation through the computer age, oftentimes computer age. In the 70s and 80s, prior to the 70s and 80s, anybody having computing technology on a personal level was unthinkable. There were some supercomputers that took place, but during this transition from the 70s to the 80s, some of us lived during that age, harnessing the power of supercomputing down to a small personal level that enabled never before speed and complexity in every aspect of life. Again, if you're born, in the 90s or beyond, the idea of having computers or, like a cell phone, it's just, you think that always existed. But you and I know that, that there used to be a time when computers at home were like, nobody had that. And it's to think about the last 40 years. I can remember, we've talked about this, my first home computer was a Commodore 64.
Sure.
You had to put floppy disks in and out, like you had 5 floppy disks to play one video game, in and out and in and out. And that wasn't that long ago. Today, you and I carry the equivalent power of a supercomputer from the 80s in our pockets with our cell phone. It's just amazing. So we had to do a tremendous amount of upskill and change of trades and technical acumen and capability to take advantage of that. And some companies did and did it faster, and others lacked. And, they paid the price.
Yep.
So,
Yep. And so, no, that's correct, Tim. And so that brings us to what's now, there's a variety of terms, the fourth industrial revolution, we like to say things quicker in today's vernacular. So, that now a lot of times you'll read it's called Industry 4.0, or if you really want to shorten it, it's, 4IR, and so it's all the same thing. It's basically this next movement. And as we said, there's only been 4 of these, and they are significant in their impact in the industry. They estimate that really the fourth industrial revolution started, roughly 5-6 years ago. Really, about 2015 was the beginning of that. I'm going to read, you can read a variety of some are easier to understand than others, of definitions of, well, what is the fourth industrial revolution? What's the change from the third, which is the computer age and automation and robotics and that type of thing, to what's this new advanced technology? And so, one of the simplest explanations that I've read says it's the concept that manufacturing can benefit from an interconnectedness of all equipment, sensors, procedures, data collection, and IT systems for a total transformation of the way the plant works. Often, this is also inside of that interconnection is the concept, or the coined term, the Internet of Things, with the thing being your business.
yeah.
And so now, and we see it, in our business at Skillwork, we recruit and we place high technical skilled individuals on a contract basis, on a travel model, into companies. And so I would say in 2021, probably, Tim, one of the biggest advancements that we saw in the ask that was coming to us, where before it was, hey, we need mechanics, which everybody still does. There's still a lot of conveyors. There's still a lot of traditional equipment, especially in the manufacturing space, but probably more than ever, we had companies who have really started to further invest in Industry 4.0,
Yep.
saying we need electronic control techs. We need individuals who, we're running a system called Wonderware, which is basically, I'm not going to pretend to act like I fully understand what it is or could work on it, but I do understand what it is. But it's the interconnectedness of all of this equipment and the sensors and so forth. And we need individuals who can oversee and run that equipment, type thing. So it's here, it's coming, probably coming even faster now because of the pandemic, and a variety of other things, because companies, you got a kind of a little bit of a perfect storm where demand is up for goods and supplies, and workforce is down.
Yeah, it's a perfect storm. So I like to say, we've looked at this close now. I think we're really beyond it's coming to that it's here.
Oh, right.
It's already here, and I think you're right, Brett. I think the pandemic accelerated a lot of things. It decelerated some things, but it accelerated a lot of things, and one of them is certainly the onset of this fourth industrial revolution. So, and it's happening, as you mentioned, against a backdrop where we have an unprecedented skills gap and just a labor availability gap. So these things are coming together, and as you mentioned, it's a perfect storm. So how do we as leaders enter this revolution and take the best advantage of it with all these unique sets of challenges, like, we've talked about it ad nauseum here, that there's a growing skilled trade shortage, the largest ever. Just today, we just saw the new inflationary numbers, and they're not great. Inflation is on the rise. That's going to put added pressure on wages. So there's a lot of complexity that you're faced with right now as a leader. There's a gap in skilled trades we talked about, and not only that, but to take advantage of this technology to retool a manufacturing facility, that's capital investment. So there's a lot of capital investment required to, you can't just wave a wand and take all of your existing equipment and say, okay, we're going to make it an interconnected system. That takes a lot of investment on your part as well. So as leaders, we know that, when you're faced with problems like this, the main thing we have to be aware of is that recognizing it's a challenge, adjusting the way we do things in order to take it head on, and then be able to address the problem in a way that's better than my competition, ahead of those that I'm in the marketplace competing against. So it kind of reminds me of the joke that you talk about with the two hikers out in the woods. Maybe you guys have heard this. So it's an oldie but goodie, and they run across a bear. So let's assume it's me and Brett, and we're out in the woods. We run across a bear, and I'm like, well, how fast are you, Brett, by the way? And and you responded, I remember, well, this actually happened to us real and you said, well, bears can run 35 miles an hour. We can't outrun a bear. And I said, I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you.
That's right.
So I don't know if I could do that, but that's the thing. In terms of competition, you only have to be ahead of your competition. You don't have to be, you don't have to set the world on fire. You just have to be a little bit ahead. So that just means taking a little bit of initiative and taking steps today to get ahead of the competition.
And I think that's right, Tim, in that, part of the goal of our podcast always is to kind of put some thought out there as business leaders, and specifically today we're talking about in the manufacturing space, is that what are you doing, as Tim indicated, you don't necessarily, not everybody, the reality is not everybody's going to invest in the advancement of technology as quick as others. But as I indicated before, probably our biggest growth in 2021 was companies that were looking for higher skills, greater technology. So we're seeing it in real time happening.
Yep.
And I think as a business leader to ignore the reality of the need to move in this direction. I've said it before, in podcasts, I have a business friend, a professional friend, high-end guy, and he told me years ago that his company, which is a large company, you would know if I said, and I won't, they had invested millions upon millions of dollars in this advanced technology, and they were dealing, this was a couple years ago, with the reality now of what we're talking about here, that they were doing it because they had to because of a general labor shortage.
Right.
And then recognizing we have a huge skills gap to be able to maintain and run this equipment. I think if there's an overarching message in our podcast today, is that reality.
I think you have to kind of do them in concert with each other. I mean, you can't just change
Absolutely.
the equipment. You got to bring the technology. You got to bring the people along with the equipment.
Yep. If I'm a business leader and I get my board to agree that we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on advanced equipment and technology, and then I have to go back to them in 6 months and go, well, we're not running any of it, or we're not running it very well because we don't have the people, I probably should get fired.
Yeah, exactly right. And I'm not sure that happened to your friend or not.
No, he retired on his own.
Good. He's seeking more personal time with the family.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I was just thinking as you were talking about that these other industrial revolutions, there were those that said they rejected the premise that it was coming, and they wanted to stick with what they currently had. There were those that said steam engines, that's not going to last, that's a fad. Same things with electrical power, and that's a fad. I've done things the same way. Those companies did not stay in business.
No.
So that's, and you made a good point earlier. This fourth industrial revolution is not just something people are talking about. It's happening, and the implication is significant to your business. So our advice is to take it seriously. So Another issue that did you have something you want to mention on that? Or?
Well, I do want to, let's unpack a little bit let's further unpack a little bit this idea of a skills gap. So we've talked about that a lot of the thing that's driving, one, the technology is available. And so how fast the fourth industrial revolution, it was going to happen, just like computers happened, and little by little it became normal.
Yeah.
This idea of interconnecting your facility, it makes sense because it makes your facility runs more efficient, you make more money, all the things that you should be doing. But sometimes because of the return on investment and the cost, you may be a little slower to go type of thing. But now we're in a situation where you have no choice. Your labor shortage. I talk to facilities. I've been in the manufacturing space for a long, long time. And what used to be, Tim, everybody ran 2 or 3% short on their front end labor. Now I talk to companies all the time and say we're 10% plus short, which at 10%, you're shutting lines down. I mean, you can't. So you are forced to this level of automation, which then leads us in to, okay, well, what about this skills gap? There was it's just a couple years ago, a Deloitte study, indicated that the skills opportunity in manufacturing has been growing at a double-digit rate since 2017. So what that tells us is that this study showed that the demand for a higher level of skilled talent is growing and growing. And the reality is we know that the number of people available to fill those is shrinking. Yeah. And so not a great situation, but it's an okay situation if you have some type of plan as a business leader to say, this is reality, this automation is reality, this advanced technology is reality, and this skilled shortage is a reality. So what are we going to do as a company to address it?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the Industrial Revolution where I said it brought on the advent of coal, those businesses that wanted to run steam engines, they had to have a steady supply of coal. So many of them partnered with companies and got ahead of time, they got a direct supply chain of coal that allowed them to operate, and where their competition was not able to do that because they hadn't thought enough in advance. So the coal, if you will, today that's going to drive this are the skills, the people that you need to be able to think about now. How do I make sure it's a supply and demand thing? It's a competitive market out there for these skilled trades. And another part of this skill gap we talk about, it's a reality. The aging population is going to continue to be a major issue and to continue to exacerbate this skill gap. 10,000 baby boomers will turn 65 every day through 2030. That's crazy. Every day. I just got back from Florida. I think I saw 10,000 on the beach at one time.
Probably so.
So it's an amazing statistic and the baby boomer group is the largest deployed working group, 72 million baby boomers. You're losing at least 10,000 of those a day are eligible to retire, and many of them are, and COVID, as we've talked about before, has also accelerated that. But many of those folks that are leaving are highly experienced, but some of them lack the skills. Some of these advanced skills, kind of can you teach an old dog new tricks? We personally think that you can take advantage of that, but the bottom line is another thing that's going to be an additional strain on the things that we're already talking about. Your experienced guys that can work on your equipment, that know your system inside and out, they're walking out the door and never before seen numbers.
Yeah. Now we hear it, Tim, as on our client side of our business. I just one of our what we call client managers, which are sales folks, just was having a conversation with a company the other day. We hear it all the time, but we don't want to ever tune it out. But it was the same thing. This company, that we just signed on to help, and they basically same thing. They said, we've got a great workforce, but we got 25 maintenance technicians, and 18 of them are going to be eligible to retire in the next 4 years. So they're waking up and going, we got a problem.
Yeah.
And so now the quicker you wake up, the quicker you realize that and go, because the facts are the facts. That individual, which was probably a local person and came in and been there for 30 years, there's not, as we'll talk about a little bit about the millennials here in a second, is not there. You know, that same Deloitte study, I want to back up before I go forward, that same Deloitte study, when we talk about this tech-heavy, tech-savvy job openings, indicated that because of this skills gap and the need for the advancement, that between now and 2028, which is 6 years, that it would leave 2.4 million positions of these high-skilled. We're not talking about front-end labor. We're talking about high-skilled positions, 2.4 million positions unfilled by 2028. And they estimate and this is Deloitte, so, they do these studies all the time, with an economic impact of $2.5 trillion. So with the idea being that the fourth industrial revolution and the advancement of the technology and the efficiencies that's going to create in these manufacturing facilities, there's a huge economic impact for them, for those companies, and then to be able to provide goods and services. Right now we're dealing with supply chain issues.
Right.
So if a facility can be more efficient, you can take advantage of that. But as we're talking about today, the biggest concern from business leaders, and all the studies support it, is your ability to attract and upskill the talent to take advantage of the fourth Industry 4.0 is going to be the biggest issue. Let me jump back forward. So Tim just said, good news, bad news. There's 72 million baby boomers. Well, I guess it's bad news because they're retiring. So the good news is that the age population that everybody looks at, or the generation that's going to replace them, the millennials, is 73 million. So, this is all going to work out perfect.
Sure.
So we're just going to take that 72, we got 73 behind it.
That's the way it's always worked, right?
Yep, exactly. Now, herein lies the problem. And again, we're not going to, tell you something that you don't already somewhat know and we're already seeing. But that generation, and when I say that generation, that doesn't mean baby boomers is a great generation. They're just different. It's
they have their strengths and they have their challenges like every generation.
Yeah, and so their approach to work and their approach to their professional career, it's just different. And as business leaders, our unwillingness to accept that reality, can be a big deal. There's a quote, I've used it forever. I like it. There was a gentleman, I say gentleman, he was a big deal back it was Edward Deming, had a quote that said, "It's not necessary to change. Survival is not mandatory." And I think it fits so well in this conversation, because here's the reality. This millennial group is right now, it has to be the answer. That, or you got to keep the baby boomers working, which I don't think is a bad idea, and I do think you can upskill some. But you're going to need this group. Here's some of the realities. That millennial generation is the most likely generation to switch jobs or seek other opportunities. 6 in 10, again, 60%, 6 in 10, will openly look for new opportunities. That's a big change from the baby boomer group, who just were more content.
Yeah, you were talking about the guy that's been there for 20, 30 years, and the reality is that is just going to that's going to go the way of, the buggy whip, so to speak. Speaking about this, it's just changing. It is.
Yep.
That's a reality. It doesn't mean you're going to get some that want to stay, but it's rather than, 70, 80%. Now you got 40% that may be willing to stay there. 60% are probably going to be looking to move.
Yep. Yeah, it's just a reality you're going to have to accept. Tim, we talk to companies all the time, about this idea that there's almost, what we do at Skillwork is, and we're talk about that here in a minute, not Skillwork per se, but a contract model as something to help. So we provide talent on contract that eventually they'll either stay there on contract, you hire them permanently, whatever the case may be. We talk to companies all the time who look and go, well, you bring your guy in, he's here 6 months, he's here a year, and then he leaves. I've advanced. But this millennial reality says 6 out of 10 of the other ones, the ones you're hiring directly, have a very strong chance that they're going to leave too. So this moving workforce is just a reality. So it really we have to switch our mind to think not so much a permanent workforce, but a talented workforce that we have to have when we need them to impact the business that we're running. You got to get away from the idea that the old way, which is I hire people and they stay 30 years, and that's great. If that was still on the table, then great. But like Tim said earlier, the companies that are still running, steam to run their manufacturing plant are probably out of business.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking earlier just about, many of you are probably sports fans. You look at the college athletic landscape, college football. Mm-hmm. Look at the transition that's happened there, where people in our generation were just aghast that a student would commit to a university and leave after a year and take another opportunity. That is just a microcosm of that generation. The idea of permanency to them is it's permanent for as long as I'm good where I am right now. Another opportunity comes along. I just want to change. I just want to see a new landscape. I want another opportunity. I don't want to wait. We're seeing it play out there. I hadn't thought about it just now. But what you're seeing in college football and other college sports, that's a reality. And I listen to sometimes these sports talk shows, and the old school fans are just like, hate it.
Oh, yeah.
Can't stand it. And the reality is it's not going back.
Yep.
And it's very much like this, the idea of a gig economy, which is a short-term job. We're seeing it in all aspects of life.
Yeah. And it's, and you'll have people, using that sports analogy, some people look at it and, like you said, they think it's terrible. Well, they're not loyal, they're da-da-da, they're this, they're that. But then there's other people who go, hey, what's best for the kid? I mean, look at Joe Burrows a couple years ago. Joe Burrows is the second-string quarterback at Ohio State, transfers to LSU, gets drafted and is making millions of dollars now. If he doesn't make that move,
chances are it didn't happen.
He probably doesn't get drafted.
Yeah.
And so you look at that scenario and go, he did what was the right thing for him. He was stuck behind somebody else. And you can kind of apply that forward to this group. And I think, again, as leaders of manufacturing companies, we have to start to think more of the idea, how do I create job flexibility? How do I utilize a contract model that more fits this group that I'm trying to attract?
Yeah.
How does it fits them a little better?
If you think about that analogy of the athlete, and you may be sitting there thinking, well, I'm talking about electromechanical technician. He's not a star athlete. The thing is, that is being driven by supply and demand. The moving around of athletes is driven by supply and demand. And if you haven't noticed, the demand for your skilled craftsmen is going through the roof. They are actively being recruited. There are people that are showing up on your floor today that are actively being reached out by recruiters and by other companies. They're being recruited to come to another facility for more opportunity, flexibility, more money, and there's nothing anymore that is going to tie them to stay where they are. Now, we encourage you to continue to take care of your people, make a great environment. You're going to have a portion of your employees that want to stay there and be there. But the trend is towards the other way. So the idea that you have to open your mind to the new reality that these guys have the ability and freedom to move, and that's just going to happen. So the statistics, are overwhelming. They're out, and they show, as Brett alluded to, that the need for the talent and the right approach to hiring and staffing has got to be put in place to take advantage of this next industrial revolution, just like those companies, the ones that were the early adapters of steam and electricity and personal computing. Those companies got ahead. They survived. They thrived. They're still with us today. The opportunity is there for you, for us, to embrace this. We've had to change our business model because we're seeing these trends happening, and we're not just telling you about them. We're walking them out ourselves, and we're having to adjust. Getting the right talent, as we've talked about, the equipment is a part of it. The talent is a big part of the equation. And we at Skillwork, we're not the 100% solution for everybody's problem across every one of your needs, but we're part of it. And we embrace the need for you to be able to adapt quickly and have the right talent to be able to move your company forward. That's what we do. We can help. So any final thoughts before we wrap this up today, Brett?
No, I think, like you said, it's just that overarching, reality is that, there is talent out there. Don't buy in to the idea, well, there's just nobody out there that wants to work anymore. There's no talent out there. That's a lie. And so but at the same time, you're not going to attract it with the old way. Now, you'll attract some of it that way, but you're not going to attract all of it. So you've got to have a multifaceted plan, if you're going to take full advantage of this Industry 4.0, which, as we have learned from past industrial revolutions, if you don't take advantage and your competition does, you're in a bad spot. And so we would encourage you not to be in that spot.
Right. And again, reach out to us at Skillwork. You can see the link right here. Get in touch with us. We may not, again, be able to be the answer, but we're always look forward to talking to you about seeing if we can provide some recommendations, maybe solutions, talk to you about our model, how it may help you be able to persevere through this and take advantage of it and thrive. So I think that's all we have for today talking about this. Hope it's been helpful. All challenges are out there. We see it's just opportunities. So we hope you see that as well. I appreciate the time you spent with us today, and until next time, thanks for joining us on the Skillwork Forum.